Get my game on here.
Kevin, can you hear us online?
Symbol mean he's muted.
Yeah.
No, she's not going to be here.
We're actually waiting for 6 seconds. You're good. All right, thank you.
Are you here at the project? Okay. Okay.
All good? Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the City of Escalon Planning Commission meeting of April 9th, 2024. Will you please join me in a pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Commission Chair Mark Sarkozy.
Here?
Commission Chair, Vice Chair Steve Castellanos.
Here?
Commissioner Barbara Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Dunbar.
Here.
And Commissioner Ronnie Van Dyke has an excused absence.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, note all cell phones, pagers, similar devices need to be set on silent or vibrate mode or turned off unless you are an on-duty emergency responder. And next we have up is the consent calendar to approve the minutes from the meeting of March 12th, 2024. Comments from anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Okay, next, item number 2, we have project number 24-760B, Site and Architecture and Variance Extension at 1750 McHenry Avenue, Escalon, APN number 227-090-470-000. Staff report?
Thank you, Chair. As was read, the item before you is for an extension of site and architecture and variance, which was previously approved by the Planning Commission in April 2022. Per the Escalon Municipal Code, site and architecture has an approval term of 2 years. So the applicant, not into construction yet, is before you with an extension. I should note the extension consideration by the commission is the same as its original adoption. So we can approve, modify, or deny at your discretion. The zoning for the property and the general plan designation is consistent. This is a C2 community commercial zoned property, and that is consistent with the proposed use. The CEQA for this project is an infill exemption. The property in question today here is located at the corner of McHenry and Roosevelt. It is a approximately 17,000 square foot vacant lot at that location, the north east corner of Roosevelt and McHenry. The applicant is proposing a 4,800 square foot retail building, the associated parking lot and landscape, One, as I'm shown on the slide here, one of the suites will be for a liquor store. The applicant currently owns a liquor store, which is located north of 120 at McHenry, next to the subway. As we understand, this would be a second location for the applicant. The remainder of the building would be two, as they call it, vanilla shells of 1,200 square feet each. We have not specifically heard what would fill those two pads, but we do understand perhaps a sandwich location, a sandwich restaurant would fill one of them. Don't know if that will materialize or not. As you can see on the site plan here, perhaps there is access from both Roosevelt on the bottom of your screen, as well as from McHenry on the top left part of your screen. And then a parking lot, serving each one of those access points with the building to the right. The applicant does own the property to the north, and so there would be access from this parking lot to the northern parking lot or property once developed. The code calls, based on the square footage of the proposed building, the code calls for 19.2 spaces, parking spaces. In our code, we round up any fraction of a parking space, and therefore 20 parking spaces would be required. The applicant is providing 19 spaces, and the approval from 2022 approved the reduction, the up to 10% reduction of parking spaces. And so it's a similar request here. There's also a variance on the site to allow a reduction in landscaping from the required 10% to 7% of the total site area, as well as the buffer between McHenry and the lot not being 10 feet as required by our code, but being 5 feet. So those two variance parameters there, as well as one additional. The building does include parapet to hide any of the equipment on the roof. This parapet is located on three sides of the building, but is not located on the back side of the building, so the side facing east, which is adjacent to residential properties. So the applicant asked for a variance to allow that, the lack of parapet on the east side there. I can share that the applicant has improved, I think, enhanced the architecture of the building since the 2022 approval. There is additional, what would you call that, rock facade, more windows, and I think longer.
The roof.
The roof has more sort of differentiation, undulation, articulation maybe. So that is the staff report. Again, this is an extension of a previously approved site and architecture, but the Planning Commission does have discretion if things are different in the last 2 years to approve, modify, or deny the site and architecture and variance. And staff would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hey, thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I have a couple. Oh, I'm sorry. Steve, did you? Okay. I've seen this in some of the paperwork. This is described as a convenience store, but it's also described as a liquor store. And on the slide we have in front of us, it's a mini mart. What is it? I mean, is it purely a liquor store, or is it something else, or a combination of the two?
I will defer to the applicant who is in attendance, but it has been described to us most recently as a liquor store, which will have, some convenience-type products,
Sundays.
primarily a liquor store.
Okay. And I read through the previous approval, and I saw that the variance was granted on the 5 feet, from 10 feet to 5 feet for the border, if you will, the landscaping. And there was a suggestion, I believe, as well for 7 feet. But I didn't really see why, it wasn't clear to me what the reasoning was between 5, why we went to 5. So I'd just like to hear a little more about that if I could.
Sure. From our understanding of the applicant and the design team, there is not ample space to provide the 10-foot buffer as well as the required parking and sort of accommodate the size building that the applicant desires. So, in the applicant's eyes, it doesn't all fit on the property. So there's a required, each parking space must be a certain width or depth. There must be a certain width or depth of, the drive aisle as well as the backup space. And then you want to get to a usable square footage of commercial properties.
Okay. Another thing that was interested in when they built the shopping center just over there, they had a couple of shells ready and waiting, and they were waiting for several years, and they were open, so they looked like lean-to. What you show on the slide is enclosed with doors and essentially business awaiting customers. Is the front going to be finished as we wait for the businesses to come in, or are we going to see open spaces there?
Again, I will defer to the applicant if we misspeak here, but as we understand, the full building will be built, and then as tenants come in to the vacant pads, they will be able to operate, but it will not be unfinished prior to that, as we understand. No disagreement.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple.
Well, just to finish that thought, the interior may be unfinished,
Sure.
of course. Yeah.
I'm
not
worried about the
exterior.
exterior and entrance into it. It would be an inviting place for people to stay, perhaps unwanted, but still inviting for them to stay, if it were open.
Question. Can you go back to, yeah. On the right side, on the top, it says alley. That alley, where does that alley stop?
Yeah. So we'll go maybe once, yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Perfect. So this is an alley that connects this property to Center Street.
Okay.
The current proposal in the area of the red box and to the property north would be to abandon that alley to capture that square footage into the properties, both north and south. It is to be determined what would end up happening with the alley further to the east, whether that remains or gets captured somehow. And then that'll depend on the subsequent development of the two properties to the north.
And then my last question is, what is different from this approval of the extension versus what we initially approved?
The only thing that has changed is the facade of the building.
Okay.
Additional architectural detailing has been provided, but everything else remains
Okay.
the exact same.
Willis, anything?
Just had a question about the, I'm not sure what they call them, the truncated domes or whatever that would go alongside the driveway coming off of Countrywood. I see that it was recommended that they not be included. Was that in the last time we addressed this, or has that just been since? I don't see it in the conditions. Is it new, or?
What page do you see that on?
I'm trying to find it. The engineer put a comment in red on one of the,
And just so we are all on the same page, are you referring to ADA
yeah, the
improvements?
yellow,
Yeah,
yeah.
at the
He said, don't put them on a
intersections.
public sidewalk because they would be a hazard.
That would be the same as last time. And he would
So
catch that in improvement plans when they submit their plans to the engineer.
Okay,
He would make sure that it's what the city specifications are.
okay, so we didn't need to include it in our conditions or anything.
No.
Okay. That's all.
So the building, it's 3 foot from the property line, right, in the back?
Looks like it, yes.
Okay, so they're up tight against that. And did the original design have the parapet on the roof?
The original design had the parapet on 3 sides of the building,
On 3 sides?
as is shown in the newest version. The styling of the parapet has changed, but it being on 3 sides remains the same.
Is that consistent with Dollar General? Okay, that's all I had. So why don't we, at this point, open it up to the public hearing, if the applicant would like to step forward? No applicant, if anybody
The
else?
applicant is here. I think there was a nod that indicated didn't desire to come forward.
Okay, okay, if there's anybody else from the audience like to comment? Okay, and anybody online?
We do have people online.
Okay. So anybody online that would like to comment on this project? Hearing no, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any other questions.
I thought Mike had a question that only the applicant answered, or am I mistaken?
Well, it was the use, the nature of the building, the use of the building. I mean, like I said, it's variously described as a mini mart, convenience store, and a liquor store. So, but you said that the applicant has a liquor store already, and this is a second location.
Correct.
So, I guess I'm just assuming this is going to be a second location and a second liquor store.
That's what we understand.
Just so I'm clear, sorry if it wasn't, if I didn't catch it all. So we're approving the extension,
You're considering the extension.
considering the extension up for approval, and then, which includes the reduction in parking, which includes the 5-foot setback, or 5 foot off McHenry, which also includes the 7% of landscaping.
Versus 10.
Versus 10. And we're also considering approval for the building windows not to project or recess 2 feet from the main building. And the rear of the building does not contain arcade features or a parapet. So everything's, we're just extending the approval. There's no new variances that we're looking for?
No new. The code requires to be into construction 2 years after approval. So the site and architecture approval will only last 2 years. We are at the 2-year window, and the applicant is seeking an extension.
So just to make, so can't we simplify the process since it's an extension and we've already approved this once before, that all we're doing is approving the extension? Or, because we listed all these things, but that was addressed in 2022. Or am I mistaken?
No, you're absolutely correct, and if that is your and the Planning Commission's preference, that's absolutely what can happen. We think it's accurate per the code and right by the commission and the public to share that this is like a new approval, and the commission absolutely has discretion to modify if they so chose. Things change in 2 years, and that's why you have a 2-year time frame. If it is the commission's direction to approve, as was 2 years ago, you could make a simple motion to that effect and proceed to a vote.
Thank you.
Well, I will make a motion to make the findings for site and architectural approval as described in Escalon Municipal Code 1754040, to make the findings for the variance approval as described in Escalon Municipal Code 1757030, approve the site and architecture and variance extension subject to the previous conditions of approval, and then direct staff to file a CEQA notice of determination with the San Joaquin County Recorder's Office.
I'll second the motion.
So motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion passes 4-0.
Can I ask a question after it's passed? So can how many other extensions can the applicant have? And how long are those extension periods for?
You know, if
I
there's-
do.
I'm sorry.
So the project gets original approval,
Yeah.
has 2 years to start construction. If they do not, they get to apply for one extension that will last for 2 years. So in this case, if the construction doesn't start for the project within 2 years, the extension will expire and the applicant would have to apply new for a new application and restart the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is item number 3, project 24-792, conditional use permit amendment for 2203 California Street, APN 227-270-030-000.
We like those zeros. This item is not quite an extension, but a project that has been seen and approved previously. This is a new addition to a current site. And so before you is a conditional use permit amendment. And that amendment is seeking to convert an existing 2,791 square foot parsonage, so a pastor's home, into church offices and meeting rooms for the administrative operations of the church. In this zone, which is R1, church sites are conditionally permitted, and therefore the need for the conditional use permit. Our code speaks to any non-conforming use or the expansion of a non-conforming use requires the approval of a conditional use permit. And so that is, in essence, what is happening. It's more church uses in an R1 zone, so we are expanding the conditionally permitted use. The CEQA exemption, or the CEQA on this is an exemption for an existing building. So it's relatively minor construction on an existing building. The property is located at 2203 California, which is north of 120 Jackson Avenue and east of Elizabeth, as you see on the slide.
West
The-
of Elizabeth, excuse me.
You're right. West of Elizabeth. The circled structure there is the parsonage, which is to be converted. A little bit of history on this project. The first CUP, conditional use permit, was approved by the Planning Commission in 1988 for a classroom building. There was a subsequent and second conditional use permit in 2002 for church remodel. And then, as far as our records show, a third conditional use permit amendment in 2019 for modular buildings for Sunday school space. So this would be the fourth amendment to, or the fourth total approval, third amendment to the original conditional use permit to convert the home. So with that, staff would be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Start on this end.
Does the conditional use permit run with the land?
Yes.
And this is a large site. If they split that parcel off, does that conditional use permit continue?
I don't think that's a straightforward answer right now. I think it would depend on why they split it, for what use. Does it maintain under their ownership or a different ownership? Are they selling it? So I think there's other factors that would go into that question for us to provide a response.
Okay. Good answer.
We try.
Although, this isn't my church, but in talking to members of the congregation, the main building is full to capacity, and they really need classrooms, or they need to convert offices into classrooms and then gain new offices. They're not going to be shedding this building, I don't believe. And you've got a big building, and when you have to heat a little office, you've got to heat the big building. But if you go to the little house and you need, AC or heat, you've got a smaller location and maybe even individual rooms rather than one big building. And from what I understand, the pastors are of long standing at this church. They do not, there's not a turnover, and they have their homes elsewhere. So it seems like this would be a long-standing situation.
No, and I have no questions.
Only thing it's good to hear that the congregation is growing and busting at the seams. There's no changing this from, the usage. It doesn't affect the parking or anything? Reason?
Not in our estimation. There's ample parking on this site. And as we understand it, there's no real new space. It's a reorganization of space. So I don't think there will be additional staff members, and so no need for additional parking.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, why don't we open it up to the public hearing if the applicant wants to step forward?
Name and address? Or just,
You don't need to.
my name's Joe Velster. I work at the Christian Reformed Church. I'm representing us here. Yeah, you got that stuff before you. Like Jalen said, there's no new staff, so parking. if you can see on this slide right here, you can see we got some longer term plans to kind of put a courtyard in between that building and the other one, but that's down the road. And even with that, we would actually be able to add some handicap parking, which we want to get more of. So we're not going to lose any handicap parking in this. Yeah, so this is first step of, we have a long master plan as we keep growing. So like I think it was mentioned that, yeah, we're bursting at the seams. So the goal with moving the staff is to actually get all our kids in one space. They're kind of spread out right now. And for safety reasons, we want to have them all in one space. Our 0 to 5s, we want them in one space on the first floor, and that's going to be the existing offices. So that's kind of the reason behind this. Yeah, the only question I had on the conditions, there was a condition about the brick, which we're fine with, except that some of it is deteriorating, so we're not sure if we can be able to keep it. So if that condition gets put on, what happens if the brick is in poor shape?
And just for everyone's knowledge here, as we go to the slide that shows the elevations, it was the applicant's original proposal to stucco over the existing brick there. Staff's thought, request, was to maintain the brick as a, in our mind, I guess, more aesthetic and more consistent with, kind of our design standards, to maintain that. And so the applicant has questions about what happens. From our standpoint, it was a request. We certainly want to work with you. If
It's just got put in the conditions.
Yeah.
Like in writing. So, because our intent, I mean, we're okay with that, but our intent, we would prefer to stucco over it because we're going to be doing stucco work already. And it would be easier and cheaper to stucco over it. And we still want it to look nice. We want it to look like a house. And we understand that's the reason for the condition. We understand that. We don't want it to look like a commercial building. We do a really, we care about the neighborhood. We want it to keep it the same feel. So our intent was to stucco it over like you would in a house with the ledge and make it look the same way. But it's, like I said, some of it's kind of in poor condition. And it's hard brick to match if we need to match it. It's that old white and red. It's, I got it in my house. I like it. And, my wife won't let me touch it, so I understand. But it gets expensive, and, we're going to close in the garage, and now you're going to have gaps and things like that, so.
So within the, consideration by the commission, we can modify a condition if the commission so chooses. It's staff recommendation at this point. We certainly understand the sentiment by the applicant, and we will defer to the commission on their preference.
Thank you. Anybody else for or against or a comment? Anybody online?
There's no one online.
Online? Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any final comments or a motion. Is that comment about, sorry, I'm not seeing that comment about the
141.
141? Gosh, that's way down there.
I was looking for it too.
Joe, are there stretches
Yeah.
of brick that are good? Is there one facade that is good and the others around are not, or?
It's definitely not good around the whole house. I mean, the front stretch is probably the best, so if you wanted, that could be something. But like I said, we're getting rid of garage doors, we're going to change a couple entrances, so to match that all out gets difficult, especially with that old style brick. It's a really cool brick, I get it, but it adds a lot of cost to the project if we have to start doing all that masonry work.
Does a church building have brick on it?
No, it's ugly cinder block.
I want commission to make, their determination. Staff originally reached out and sort of inquired if it was feasible for the project. Initial indications was, yeah, perhaps it was feasible. Perhaps as, they continue to look at and think about the project, maybe they have come up with additional challenges. Again, certainly staff's recommendation, but not something that is absolutely required. It's not even directly code. Certainly in the code, it speaks to design guidelines, and I think it definitely, sort of leans towards preserving brick and, those types of timeless materials, more so than stucco. But I just want to share kind of staff sentiment on this condition.
I have another question. Joe, how extensive is the fence around it? Is it going to stay?
No, we want to remove the fence in the backyard.
Okay.
Because it creates a blind corner, so we want to get rid of that fence for safety reasons.
Well, I have a question. So the elevation that is facing the street, it's going to be solid stucco?
No, I think there's going to be ledges coming out, there's going to be different, different depths of it,
It'll be stucco.
stucco and painted, yeah.
Can you put something up in the front that kind of, instead of a blank wall that's,
It won't be flat, there'll be depths to it. There'll be architectural detail along the brick is.
it'll be what, 4-inch depth? Maybe put something around the windows or something.
Kind of keeping the planter of landscaping and bushes around it, we're kind of proud of our bushes, so we want to keep those looking nice. Picture, you hardly even see the brick with the bushes there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'll look hard.
Jalen, this is the view from
California
California.
Street.
Yes, this was captured in one angle, right, from street view.
Commissioner Dunbar?
No more questions.
Okay, any motions?
I'll make a motion that we approve this proposal, this application, that we make the findings as required for section 17.56.030 for use permits, that we find the project CEQA Class 1 categorically exempt under section 15301N, existing structures. And I would like to eliminate condition number 3 as far as the brick wall and leave it up to the developer, the finish on the proposal. Leaving the other conditions as they are.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Okay, moving on to administrative matters. None tonight?
And tonight.
Okay. Matters presented from the audience. Anything else from our audience tonight? Okay. Nobody online?
Nobody online?
Okay, you guys are making it easy on us. Staff communications.
one thing for me, maybe Diana has others. City did receive our comments on the draft that we submitted to HCD on the housing element. There were what we consider minor comments, especially as you look at the landscape of comments provided by HCD. There probably is enough there and some additional analysis to necessitate a second submittal to HCD for a subsequent review. We think that is the most prudent approach. And so staff and the consultant team are going through the comments received by HCD, updating the document accordingly, and we'll submit as quickly as possible to HCD. So just wanted to share in the timing. We were hopeful, we were semi-optimistic that perhaps we could do it in one review. I do think there are some existing policies, ordinances that HCD has questions about, and so therefore we will need to provide additional information. We do not think these provide an impediment to the implementation of the housing element, but they have additional concerns, enough to where it likely necessitates a second submittal. So that's the one item I have.
I have none.
Okay. And we have none.
All right, so Commissioner Communications, maybe start down here. Commissioner Dunbar.
None for me today.
Commissioner Willis.
Thank you to the staff for all your work on these issues. That's all.
Castellanos.
No.
Everybody's so talkative tonight. Okay, well, I'll join the club. Thank you. And that's all I have. So at 7:11, we'll adjourn tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Daughter's birthday.
Oh,
This conference is no longer being recorded.
fellow
That's what we call our Lucky Maggie.
commissioners, would you like to have him continue as a chair? He's doing such a good job.
Sure.